Hello, everyone. I am Lisa Lauer, Senior Nutritionist with Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, and I will be the moderator for this webinar today. And I just wanted to say good afternoon. The Missouri Healthy Schools team is excited to offer this timely webinar on addressing food allergy in changing times. As we move through the presentation, please place any questions in the chat. If you have questions now, go ahead and place those in the chat. They will be answered during the panel discussion. And I wanted to share a little overview of our agenda. First, we will have a food allergy overview. And then we'll move to a panelist discussion, followed by question and answer. But before we begin, we would like to learn who's in our audience today. And so we are going to drop a poll in, and we would like for you to complete and let us know your role in school. Anna, just let me know how we're doing on the poll.
Okay, currently we have a close race between school nurse and nutrition services director.
That's
so
awesome.
We're getting lots of answers in. Yeah, we have almost everyone has completed.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll give it just another second here and then I'll let you take it from there.
That's so exciting. We've got a great crowd. They're on the ball.
All right, so we can go ahead and proceed if you want to, Lisa.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and move to our next slide. And I would like to introduce today's speaker. We have Sally Schoessler. She is the Director of Education for the Allergy and Asthma Network. With a strong background in school nursing, Sally has worked closely with schools, school nurses, and families to manage food allergies. She has helped develop state guidance and led an interprofessional team that created school policies and protocols for management of food allergies in the school setting. She's provided input and testimony on allergy management to the CDC and Institute of Medicine. Most of all, Sally is all about the children and helping each one learn to manage their allergy and live a full and healthy life. Please welcome Sally.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate the introduction, and I have a few slides here. I've just got to get back to the first one. There we go. So it's my pleasure to talk to you today about food allergies at school. And this will just be a bit of an overview about food allergies. I'm going to skim on the top of a few subjects, but we can always get more information for you if needed. I just like to start with a quote, and Nelson Mandela is the one that said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." And I think that that's just so true. I'm just so interested in the fact that we just treat each child as that special and unique person that they are. So here we go. And I'd like to just introduce to you the mission of the Allergy and Asthma Network, where I'm situated, and that's to end the needless death and suffering due to asthma, allergies, and related conditions through outreach, education, advocacy, and research. So today's subject is food allergies. And I think one of the most interesting things about food allergies is that each reaction is unique. And that's one of the frustrations of dealing with food allergies at school. There is no textbook food allergy reaction that we're going to see. So even if a child has a mild reaction one time, they're at risk of the next one as being more severe or just as mild. So basically, we need to be ready for anything at school. So this is an example of, I've got to get my little box out of the way here, of what an allergic reaction looks like. One thing that's very frustrating for people that are trying to explain food allergies, especially to parents, is that the first time you eat an offending food, there is no reaction. And the reason for that is that your mast cells don't recognize it yet as an intruder or an offender. So the first time you eat the food, IgE is created, and it binds to the mast cells, either or a basophil cell. So the next time you eat the food, the cell says, "Oh my gosh, this is awful. We need to have a reaction," and it releases histamine, and the histamine is what causes the symptoms of allergic reactions. But often if you're the one that's calling a parent to say their child has had an allergic reaction at school, they might say, "But he had peanut butter last week. He was fine." And then the answer is kind of like, of course. But we have to really help people to understand that that is the pathophysiology of an allergic reaction. So to look at the top 9 food allergens as of last year at this time, we would have said that they were the top 8 food allergens. But since then, the Food Allergy Safety Treatment Education and Research Act of 2021, or the FASTER Act, was passed. And what happened with that is that sesame was added to the list of top food allergens. So now we're seeing peanuts, tree nuts, wheat, dairy, fish, eggs, shellfish, soy, and sesame as the top allergens. And these sesame will be on the packaging information by 2023. So when we're talking about allergies, another thing that's important to think about is food intolerances. And we're going to talk about the difference between an allergy and an intolerance, but we're going to do it with milk or lactose intolerance, because we certainly see that at school. So when we're talking about where the reaction takes place, with a food intolerance, it takes place in your digestive system. It just is annoying. It makes you feel lousy. But if it's an allergy, it takes place in your immune system. So it's a completely different ballgame. So if you're talking about an intolerance, you're going to have a mild to moderate discomfort let's say that when you drink milk, you're going to have gastrointestinal symptoms, diarrhea, nausea, all sorts of lovely things. The reaction may be delayed. And basically the action you should be taking is to see a healthcare provider and talk about, should you be taking some kind of an enzyme that will help you to digest the milk, or should you avoid certain foods? But with an allergy, we're having that immune response, and this can be life-threatening. It usually includes multiple body systems. You're going to see the airways affected. You might have some gastrointestinal symptoms as well, but it's really a multi-body system reaction, and it's usually immediate. It can be within seconds, it can be within minutes. And this is the kind of thing where the life-threatening allergic reaction is called anaphylaxis. And if anaphylaxis is occurring, you need to call 911 and make sure that you get emergency care. So one thing we did at Allergy and Asthma Network is we created these little posters to go over the phone in a classroom, so that all school staff is aware of life-threatening allergy symptoms. And the symptoms are, when you have trouble breathing, maybe a hoarse voice, diarrhea and crampy pain, hives or swelling. I mean, one time I had a girl whose hives with about 2 minutes went all the way up the side of her face. It was very dramatic. And you can have nausea and vomiting, dizziness and fainting. You get a real tightness in the throat. You can have abdominal pain. And one of the interesting things with anaphylaxis is that you can have a real feeling of doom or confusion. Very often, kids will say, something is really wrong. And the other thing, if you're taking care of younger children, that they might tell you their mouth is hot. I had one little child who that was always kind of his phrase. He'd say, Mrs. Schoessler, my mouth is hot. And that's basically from the histamine release in his mouth. And so you might want to even ask kids how they describe their allergic reaction, because if I hadn't talked to this little guy and found out that that was what he felt and what he would tell me, I mean, I could have said, honey, there's 12 kids in here, get a drink of cold water, sit down, I'll be with you later. But no, we need to pay attention if that little guy says my mouth is hot. So there's three main routes of exposure when it comes to food allergies: oral, skin, and inhalation. For an oral exposure, this is where it's going to either come in the mouth. Sometimes it can come in the eyes or the mucous membranes of the nose as well. But basically, this is when you've eaten something or you've touched something and put your hands in your mouth. And so you certainly will see that most allergic reactions will start in the classroom in a school. There's been studies done on this. It would be nice if they started in the nurse's room, but it doesn't work that way. And so with younger students, what you need to be really aware of is the number of times the hands go in the mouth during a day. So if they touched something that had an allergen on it, even if they didn't eat it, the number of times the hands go in the mouth is kind of startling. And with older students, some of the issues you see are risk-taking, peer pressure, bullying. We have a little guy we knew who somebody decided to smear peanut butter on him just to see if he really was allergic. And a lot of teaching has to happen in those situations. But also kissing can be an issue for students that have severe allergies. But so the big thing is to consider at school, labels must be read and meals should be offered to students without allergens in them. And we need to assist children into making their choices. But we want to talk to kids all the time about no sharing of food, drink utensils, no unlabeled food. And it'd be great if we could have celebrations at school that didn't involve food. But you want to make sure that you're looking at strategies to avoid cross contact. And one thing I just want to make a quick reference to, we could do a whole webinar on this subject, and that's that it's better not to ban an allergen from the environment. So you don't want to say we're going to have a peanut-free school, because what they found with research is that the minute you say we're going to ban it, you really can't. You can't control it that closely, and you become a lot less vigilant in watching for allergens if you think you've banned them. And exposures actually go up if you try to ban a food. So we talk about being allergy safe and having an allergy safe environment. And the other thing is to have periodic check-ins with students and staff. I used to, when I was a school nurse in an elementary school, I used to try to do rounds most days, and I would pick a grade level each day of the week. And when I was going to second grade one day, I went in the classroom of a student she had a very, very allergic to peanuts child. He'd already had CPR twice before he came to kindergarten. So we always kept a special eye out for him. And I looked at her, I said, Meg, what are you doing? And she was going to do a class project of rolling pine cones in peanut butter and then in birdseed to make bird feeders. And I said, you can't have that peanut butter around him. And she said, well, he wasn't going to eat it. And it was kind of like, oh heavens, I thought I was so clear on what I'd said, but every day is a new opportunity to educate. So the next thing we're going to talk about is skin exposure. If you have an exposure to, let's say, and we're going to use peanut butter again, like peanut butter on intact skin, you should have no reaction at all, because intact skin is not going to allow for an exposure inside the body for an allergen. However, if you've touched it, it goes very quickly from being a skin exposure to being an oral exposure. So you just always want to be super careful, because even adults touch their nose, eyes, and mouth all the time. So the best thing to do, soap and water. Boy, we hear that a lot, but it's absolutely true. Commercial hand wipes can be good for removing allergens. Hand sanitizer, we've heard in COVID, use hand sanitizer, but when it comes to allergens, it's not hand sanitizer. All hand sanitizer does is move the allergens around. It doesn't get rid of them. So you want soap and water. And if you have a child in a situation that is incredibly allergic, you probably want to wash hands before and after lunch instead of just before. Think about non-edible items that can contain an allergen. Some finger paints, Play-Doh, and I don't really know why we put shaving cream in the school, but you never know. But those things can have lactose in them. We had one field trip that went to a zoo once. A little guy was feeding the goats, but they dust the food in the zoo with lactose, so the animals will be more likely to eat it. And he had a reaction because it was the lactose on the food. So just got to really watch out. And so again, hand washing, have a good cleaning protocol. And if at all possible, have your lessons in class not include food. Inhalation is an interesting one. Some people think that, oh, I can smell it, so there's a problem. It's not the odor that causes a reaction. It's aerosolized proteins in the air. And so especially what you want to be careful of is things that you've cooked or boiled and it's coming up in the mist, in the steam. That can be fatal. And the big thing usually is as people get older is seafood. If someone's allergic to seafood, they should not lean over a pot that's boiling seafood. And think too about science experiments that might have burning or heating. That creates a risk. And again, too, you want to think about cooking with food. You know, flours and powders can get up in the air and those small particles can be inhaled. And then I'm going to just touch on field trips, because again, this is another one that could be a whole webinar on its own. This is a minefield of issues for students with food allergies. You want to really think about who can go on which field trip. And I know that in Missouri, there's some district by district decisions being made, but on a national basis, you know, it's pretty much taken that that kids are protected with their education, that if one child can't go on the field trip, nobody goes. You cannot exclude a child from a field trip. You can ask a parent to go, which is great, but you can't require them to go. So just be thinking about that as you're making that kind of plans. So issues at school, we want to make sure that we're preventing exposures from food and supplies in the school. You want to make sure that you have a good system in place for staff notification and education. Back in the day, in the early 70s, people would write these long confidential health lists and share them, but that became, I guess the word is illegal, in the early 70s. So really the best way to notify staff of an allergy is to provide an emergency care plan, because it's one thing to say, well, they're allergic to nuts. It's another to say, here's how you handle it. And then education, all staff needs education. We actually had at one elementary school I worked at, they hired someone to greet the children at the door. Isn't that just lovely? But that person had to be well educated in allergic reactions, because she's the one that caught it one morning when a child walked in and their eyes were swelling and they had some hives on their face. And she said, "Did you eat something on the bus?" And from there, we went into a full-blown anaphylactic reaction. So everybody needs to know. I think we've seen food in classrooms more often during COVID-19 than we had otherwise. I know a lot of schools in the area that I work we're going to eating in the classroom, which creates more issues, but hopefully we're going to come out of all of this at some point. And the other thing is to always be prepared to mount an emergency response at school. And epinephrine is the gold standard and the drug of choice, not an antihistamine, but you want to think about epinephrine. So we want to look in schools at a three-pronged focus. We want to look at collaboration. We want to make sure we're all working together. We want to look at preventing allergic reactions, because wouldn't it be nice if they didn't happen? But we do always have to be ready to mount an emergency response in the event that one does happen. One great way that we worked on this in a district I worked in when I was at a middle school is that the nurses and the food service got together and we held a parent night. And we had all the parents of our children with food allergies come in. It was a big school and they came, which was remarkable right there. And we had a presentation done by each. And then the food service people brought all their binders with them of what ingredients were in which food. And the parents could sit down with them and they'd figure out which foods were safe for their child. And the morning after this big meeting, this really cute kid comes running in my office and he goes, Mrs. Schoessler, I had a cookie. And I went, well, that's really nice, John. you had a cookie. He goes, I've never had a cookie at school in my whole life. And I'm in middle school. But mom found out that I'm not allergic to anything in the sugar cookies. I had a cookie. I feel great. And off he went. But it was like this moment of triumph for him. And it was a wonderful collaboration. So as we look at resources, Allergy and Asthma Network has lots of things for you. We've got our Allergy and Anaphylaxis Practical Guide for Schools and Family. It's a free download on our site. And we also have an epinephrine treatments poster that you can use to look at all the up-to-date treatments for anaphylaxis. We have an anaphylaxis at a glance poster. We've got a lot of things. So I encourage you to check out our website at allergyasthmanetwork.org and let us know if you have questions. You can always reach me. I put my email address right here. And we do everything we can to help make sure that all kids are safe at school. So Lisa, that would be, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can go back to yours.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was so interesting and so informative. There's just so many things to learn and remember related to food allergies. And I just thank you so much. We do want to do one thing before I introduce our group of panelists. We have had so many people join the webinar that we'd like to do a poll, one more poll of who's on the webinar. So Anna's going to put that poll up again, and sorry, but we're going to ask you to let us know what your position in your school or school district is one more time.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we could capture everyone who's joined us today. So we appreciate you chiming in again here with us. So we'll keep it open for a few more seconds here. And
Yes.
Right now we've got school nurses in the lead. So.
Aha, good to know. I can't see, so I'm always glad to get your updates, Anna. And I love Sally's story about the cookie, and something that we need to remember with our students with allergies, making sure that they are included and we understand how they feel when they are included. It's always a good feeling.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and wrap up the poll here now, and I believe I can share the results with everybody.
Oh, great.
So you can see here who all we have with us today. So yeah, really appreciate your participation in that, because we were looking forward to seeing who the audience would be. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, with that, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have an amazing group today joining us for a discussion on their experiences related to food allergies and changing times. And so first we have Angie Anderson. Angie received a BSN at Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas. She has experience working in hospital, clinic, and school settings. Angie worked as a school nurse for 25 years in Missouri, and she retired in 2019. Now she enjoys mentoring and supporting healthy staff in schools across Missouri. And we've got Rhonda McCulloch. Rhonda is a registered dietitian and has been the nutrition services director for Park Hill for 16 years. During her time in Park Hill, she and her team have built 5 new schools, a day school, an early childhood center, and a new expanded warehouse. During the COVID-19 shutdown, she and her team have provided daily hot meals as well as 5 days of frozen meal kits to students and community children. They currently provide allergy and special diet accommodations for more than 100 students in the district and work closely with their nursing staff and parents to meet their students' needs. And finally, we are so lucky to have Barb Shaw. She is the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Coordinator of Food and Nutrition Services and the Missouri State Director for U.S. Department of Agriculture School Nutrition Programs. Shaw provides leadership and administration for quality school food service programs each day. And I would like to turn to Angie for a brief. I'm going to take the slide down so we can see everyone as we are I'm going to stop sharing so we can see everyone as we do the panel discussion. And Angie, would you mind sharing how this topic came up? There was some communication that you had with schools and school nurses, and it started this conversation about allergies in our changing school communities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. And Sally, thank you for that presentation. Very
Please.
good. Yes. Our Missouri Healthy Schools team, we meet on a regular basis to discuss the challenges and successes that school districts are having in Missouri. And we know right now you're experiencing challenges that you haven't experienced before COVID. So in one of the meetings with school nurses, they were sharing how they have to be even more proactive than before. We were aware that we have to watch what parents bring into the school for parties. We have to be aware of those students sitting around our students with food allergies. And we're aware of those, but there's a new aspect when we start having meals in the classroom. And we have to educate our teachers even more and support them and even help them with some of that supervision. We can have teachers eating in the classroom, and some of them are trying to eat healthy. So they're putting tuna in their salad, they're eating peanut butter, or another allergen. And they don't understand that that could be potentially life-threatening to a student because they're trying to take care of themselves, and we totally understand that. But they also could get interrupted in their meal and quickly get up to go open a milk carton for a student. And in doing that, they could potentially expose that student to an allergen that they had not even thought about. So it's taking nurses even farther into that, supervising the classrooms and educating the staff on how they can accidentally expose a student. And so we wanted to pull all of us together and have more information from Sally. We appreciate that. But then also, how can we provide additional support to you as school staff and let you have those discussions amongst our panel and amongst each other so that we can support you even better, because we know these are challenging times and things that we typically don't even think about are happening in our schools.
Thank you, Angie. That is a great intro. And then I just wanted to turn to Rhonda and Barbara. I'll go to Rhonda first and just ask what has been happening in Park Hill and what changes have you noticed? Have you had to make?
Well, thank you, Lisa, and great job, Sally. That was really informative. In Park Hill, we have COVID, as with everybody in every district across the country. It has turned our world a little upside down compared to what we were used to and what we had our processes in place to do. So we have seen a lot of changes. As I noted, we originally, once COVID started, we had to shift to feed our students in a different way. We had hot pickup meals because students weren't in school and they were working at home. So we had to provide hot pickup meals, and we also provided the 5-day frozen meal kits. And this was included with our allergy students. So we wanted to be inclusive to them. So we had a number of students that did reach out to us and expressed interest in continuing their meal service accommodations. And so within those hot meals or the 5-day meal kits, we provided special allergy foods and accommodations to those students. So that was something new and different that we had to really stretch and think what would go into a frozen meal packet that we might not put on the menu normally. We also had to look at the different beverages. We provided the almond milk or a special beverage if that's what they needed to accommodate their allergy diets. And as we've transitioned back into the schools, it's continued in a different way to be a stretch for us, because we are lucky in the fact that we did feed in the classroom, but we had all of our students come through our cafeterias. So we still had our, excuse me, our staff there that could control the diets and who got what, and then it was just carried to the classroom. But as we've opened back up this year, we thought we were in the clear, and then COVID has dealt us another blow because we lost our prime vendor early on in the school year. And so we've had to buy food from whatever sources and from wherever we can get it. And as a result of that, you don't immediately realize it, but we've had to be very, very careful with our allergy students because the, let's say, the chicken that we used to buy, the chicken patty, may not be dairy free any longer. So, or it may have egg in it now, which it didn't before. So we've had to be very careful in flexing and changing and checking every product that comes into our warehouse and into our schools, because we've had to make those modifications. In addition, another good problem that we've had is we've seen a lot more students participating because we can provide free meals to all of our students this year. And that's a great thing. But we've also seen concurrently with just more students eating, we've seen a huge influx in new allergy students asking for accommodations. So we've been working closely with our nurses in the schools. We have a process in place. And so we've had a huge amount of new allergy diets that we are accommodating, which is wonderful. It's just getting the supplies to meet that need. So it's a great problem and a challenging problem all in the same breath. So
Thank you so much, Rhonda.
sure.
That is great information and things that I hadn't even thought about. And I'm looking forward to moving to questions, but I would like to have Barbara Shaw just share what has been going on with, at DESE, Food and Nutrition Services, and give us a little information and her thoughts on the things related to food service and allergy, those kind of things.
Hi, yes, absolutely. So everything that Angie Anderson and Rhonda shared, due to all the shifts in meal services and with the new supply chain challenges, our office has seen an increase in schools' concerns about food allergy compliance and an increase from parents and their concerns on food allergies as well. There have been so many new best practices because of these challenges that we can focus on as a positive thing, and everyone has been doing what they're supposed to be doing with checking labels and make sure that they are using the non-competitive procurement methods to go out and purchase different items from grocery stores if they can no longer get those through a distributor, or checking to make sure that if there is a substitute that it does meet the diet standards of any child with a food intolerance or an allergy or another disability. One thing, our office just continues to focus on is ensuring that the schools continue to work collaboratively with students and parents and all subject experts at the school to ensure those children are still receiving a safe meal, and most important, that they all have equal opportunity to participate in the school meal programs. So that's all that I have to share.
Thank you so much, Barb. I think, once again, it's just wonderful to hear from everyone. And Anna let me know that we have lots of great questions that have come up in the chat. And I think we're going to go ahead and we want to make sure that we have enough time for question and answer, and that we utilize the knowledge of all our panelists. So I'm going to turn this over to Anna and let her start fielding some questions.
Unmute. So first off, I wanted to go ahead and we're having a little post-event survey. If everyone would like to participate in that, I'm going to drop the link in the chat here. And we'd love to get your responses on how you felt the webinar today went, and if you have any further additional questions. So yeah, I got a lot of good questions to start us off here from the registrations. And if you have any additional ones, please drop them in the chat there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. So to start us off, we have some kind of a general question that says, what are the best ways to communicate with students about the dangers of food allergies to their peers? Whoever on our panel wants to jump in.
Well, there's lots of ways it can be done. I think it's and time is always the issue, isn't it? That we could do so much if we could just decide that we had time to do it all. But I don't know a school nurse yet who's saying, well, I'm just looking for something else to do. I think one thing that's really kind of nice to be able to do is, some people bring the kids together in a grade level group sometimes for an activity or something like that. But to be able to do some education or educate the teachers to do some education and come up with some ways to really help the students understand. The big thing is to make sure that you never point out who in the room has the allergy. The kids tend to know because the kids tend to talk about it, but just to remember that that child does have a right to the confidentiality of their personal health information. So you would never want to sit in a classroom and say, so Johnny, talk to us about your food allergy, but it would be absolutely great if there could be some lessons as you went about food allergies. One thing I did when I was doing my master's degree is I did a lesson with the kids in the computer lab where I led them through different places to look for food ingredients and talked about it in that setting. So sometimes you can get a teacher to collaborate with you too, and that's pretty wonderful thing.
That's
Ellie,
great.
I agree with that. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, I'm sorry. I just wondered does the Allergy and Asthma Network have any lessons or anything like that our school nurses or food service directors could utilize? Any, thing that's ready?
Well, what we have, a lot of what we've been doing is trying to teach people to manage them, the allergies. So we do have tabletop drills for schools to practice what they would do in the event that there was an allergic reaction, but that's not geared to the children. One place I used to go a lot when I was looking for lessons for the children is Nemours has a website called Kids Health, and it's got resources aimed at kids, teens, and parents. And the kids and the teens, it's written in their language, geared right for them. So that might be a good place to start too.
Angie, did you have any follow-up on that?
I was just agreeing with Sally. And sometimes I would try to partner with health teachers and PE teachers to put more education out, go through like the ingredient list, like what you're talking about, and nutritional components, because they can do overviews and talk about those in the classrooms.
Thank you. All right, one of our next questions is, do you know any good resources for teachers or other staff about food allergies that doesn't have a lot of medical language? And I'll jump in and say that I'm compiling some of these links and resources that we're putting here, and then any of our speakers or anyone after this who sends me the resources, I'll reshare them with the registrant list for the webinar today, so everybody will have those available.
Well, I don't want to keep jumping in, so if somebody wants to mute me, go ahead. But we have a free download of it's about a 36-page document called Allergy and Anaphylaxis, a practical guide for schools and families. And in the first section of that is all an Allergy 101, written at a 6th grade reading level, a lot of good information. And we also have a document called Understanding Anaphylaxis that, again, they overlap a little bit, but there's some good information. We also work hard to keep the reading level down on our website. So parents could certainly go to our website and learn some things there.
I'm not sure what the specific resources are, but Institute of Child Nutrition is another website that you might try. They have a lot of good information, and I'm sure they probably have information on allergies and allergy management, and it's usually done in a very, very user-friendly manner. So that might be another resource as well.
Thank you, Rhonda. That is a good resource. And I think actually they just had a webinar on allergies fairly recently. So we'll look that up and put that in the resources as well.
Great. So our next questions are discussing snacks that are brought in by other parents and how these are addressed, as well as handling snack time in the classroom.
I will just jump in here. Here in Park Hill, we have been grappling with that issue for a long time. And one of the things that we have recently done is came up with a list of snacks, treats, because our parents have not been able to bring anything in since COVID. And they loved the celebrations. They love to bring in special snacks and things like that, but we also have to be mindful of the allergies. So there is a snack list that has been put together in collaboration, I believe, with some of our educators and our nurses. And those are published on our website. Parents are allowed to bring anything from those lists in. It has to be packaged, and they're very specific items. And those are allergen-free items that don't contain the major allergens. And that has worked really well because it gives the parents options, and it gives everybody the same options so that nobody is restricted, but it also frees up our nurses and their time and, the risk of issues in the classroom with allergens or allergic reactions. So that is something that I think has been useful for us.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm.
That was very helpful. Does anybody else have any input they want to share now, or? All right. So I had a question about refusal forms, which seems to be when the parents or students sign the form that states that the students will handle their allergies on their own. How would you recommend handling these forms? And what does the school need to do in the event that they receive these forms?
Well, And I will just jump in again and let you know what we do in our district. We have worked really closely with our nurses, and we have come up with actually a process map that we follow. And if it's, the nurses are the gatekeepers of the allergies. So parents let the nurses know what allergens their students may have. Then they have the opportunity from a food standpoint to either opt in and fill out a diet modification form, which then comes to us, and we go through a process to go through and meet with the parents and the child and set up an allergy modification plan and provide diets, whether they want food for breakfast and lunch. If they're in after school childcare, we provide whatever those accommodations are. However, if they opt out, then we actually have an opt-out form that they fill out saying that they will take responsibility and they do not want to purchase meals or food from the cafeteria. And they do have that opportunity as well. Then in addition, if they have a situation, and we do run into this quite a bit, that they've filled out an allergy modification form, and then the child's diet changes or they no longer need the accommodations, then we actually have a form that they can fill out to DC the diet modification. And that makes it very clear cut. And it also gives safety for our parents so that they know what's happening. And we also know what we need to accommodate and what we are no longer going to accommodate. So.
Rhonda, are those forms on your school website? Those would be great to share.
I believe they are. We just got a new website, so I would have to look out there, but I believe that they are out there. And if not, there's something that I think that we can definitely share the process map and the form so that others can look at it, and maybe that process would work for them. Maybe they need something different, but it's worked pretty well. And we started that in 2019. We redid the process and came up with some of these additional forms, and it's really solved some of our issues that we were having.
I think that sounds like a great resource, because I know it might be a struggle sometimes to manage those processes and just have that set standard on how you're going to do things. Marge, I see you have a question, so I'll let you jump in best.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad that I was able to come and pop into this session. I'm Marge Cole, I'm the state school nurse consultant, and this is one of my favorite sessions, favorite topics, and Sally has been my dearest colleague for so long. So thank you so much for coming back to Missouri one more time for us.
I feel like I should move there. I've done so many things in Missouri.
But aren't we lucky that she will continue to come, everyone? So thank you, Sally. Now, I want to make sure that we're all remembering, school nurses and school folks, to look at your board policy. So many times we forget to look at our school board policy. And our school board policy has a lot of information about how we're going to address food allergies and sensitivities and things like that. So please don't forget to look at that. Sometimes we're very surprised about some of the things it says because we get busy and the board secretary forgets to tell you that something was updated. But we were really very lucky that the Missouri School Boards Association actually worked with school nurses when we wrote the school board policies and then how to implement the policies. So have a look. And I also want to thank Barb Shaw for being here, because just last night, on behalf of another school nurse, I sent Barb Shaw a question. And at 9 o'clock that night, she answered it. So I know how busy Barb Shaw is. But it's, always remember the DESE website. So Barbara, I haven't looked it up, but I think that the food service website that we have at DESE has so much good information for our schools as well. And Rhonda, thank you so much for bringing to our attention that things aren't like they were when I was a school nurse. The pandemic has changed everything. And you all have pivoted. Food service did the best and most important pivot of all of us in the last 18 months. And none of us have thanked you and your colleagues enough for what you've done. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
So I'll go back on mute, but I have to say something if I'm around. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Marge. All right, so we're
Thank you
getting
very much. This is Barbara again, and I just wanted to follow kind of what Rhonda said. And from a program standpoint at the state agency, the documentation of the forms are very critical when it comes to reimbursement for those meals, because the schools have to require a written medical statement in order to receive reimbursement for any meals served to kids that do not meet the meal pattern because of substitutions made. So any children that are classified with a disability, whether that is a food allergy or an intolerance, they are required to have that medical statement on file. Or if they do have a 504 or an IEP, that can take the place of having that medical statement. So just wanted to kind of echo what Rhonda said on those forms, and just let everybody know, like whenever food service does our compliance reviews for reimbursement, but also to cover that civil rights piece and thinking about disabilities and equal opportunity, those forms are very critical.
Thank you, Barb. That's really helpful information. We got a question here in the chat that I think kind of follows along those same lines, and saying, how do you manage not being able to get a response from a parent when they have listed allergies on their health form that need accommodations?
Sometimes that can be really frustrating. You may leave messages for them, voicemail, you may send emails, and it's really hard to get in touch with them. Certainly documenting that you've reached out that many times. But what I found almost more helpful is if I could get through those registrations at the first of the year, then in October, when we start having those parent-teacher conferences, I could catch them when they're coming in for those conferences and meet with them one-on-one and just express to them how important it is that we're trying to keep their kids safe at school and that we need help getting the information to know how to do that best.
I always found that after I always called it gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. And after I had tried to get information from a parent, I found a nice little letter that was very friendly, that was signed by both myself and the principal, was incredibly effective.
So an old-fashioned snail mail letter is a good resource as well.
Well, that was when we did that almost exclusively. So I haven't been at the school nurse desk that recently, but I'm sure I'd be using email now, but I don't know how I would do it differently, but I would.
All right, so I have a couple of medication specific questions. And after that, if anybody, we only have a few minutes left, but if anybody wants to raise their hand and we'll try to fit a question in before the end, then we will try and get to that. The medication questions are, should you always go straight to the EpiPen, and or the recommendations on using Benadryl for reactions?
I'll take this one if that's okay. Basically, if a child, you want to think about allergic reactions as apples and oranges. For a mild allergic reaction, Benadryl is okay. If a child is in anaphylaxis, you must give them epinephrine. A Benadryl takes 30 minutes to act approximately. A child might have 10 minutes. You have to give the epinephrine. Two little stories. One of them was an allergist I worked with said, if you ever say to yourself, gee, I wonder if I should give and epinephrine's the next word, give it and don't even finish the sentence. And the other one thing I heard, and this is a little crass, but it really left me with the impression, one very famous allergist said, if you give a child Benadryl for an anaphylactic reaction, you're just going to make it so they don't itch as much while they die. So, but epinephrine, that is the drug for anaphylaxis. And again, I could do a webinar on this topic.
Right. And keeping in mind, if a doctor has written the emergency action plan that the antihistamine is the first medication to give, and then the child continues to get worse, not having relief, go ahead and use the EpiPen. It's not going to hurt to have the Benadryl on board and then use the EpiPen. Don't hesitate.
Right. And you can do it one right after the other if that's where the orders are written.
This is
Right.
such great
Good.
information.
Yes. I wanted to get to a really good question in the chat that we received. And what do you do when a student swipes food that they're allergic to? I thought that one might be for Rhonda.
Been there and done that. And I do feel for the students because sometimes they are more, the parents are more adamant about the diet and the students just want to be like their friends. And so we do have that situations. We have to be very diligent because we are responsible as the adults. But we did have a child actually run into the cafeteria just this year. They knew they were dairy free on a dairy restricted diet. And they came in, snuck in at breakfast, grabbed a smoothie and went down the hall and drank it before we were aware of it. And they actually had to get medical treatment. So what we did in that case is we want to keep that child safe. So we did contact the parent. The parent was aware of what happened. And so we had a meeting with the principal, with our staff, with that child, the mother, and we really discussed it. And we tried to discuss what other options the child could have that would satisfy them and that would still meet their dietary restriction. But we also let them know that they had responsibility and they did have to be responsible for their diet. This was a middle school student, so it was, we put the onus back on them too, that this had to be their responsibility as well. They signed on to that. And since that time, we haven't had any more problems with that child, but we have had other students in the past that their friends come up and get things for them. When we do find that out, we go to the parents and we also do everything we can to limit that. Sometimes we just aren't aware because they do find ways to sneak what they want. So, we have had multiple meetings with some students just for that reason. And at some point we do have to, to draw the line and say, we can't provide service if, we can't be responsible if your student won't be responsible. So that's a really hard one. And I commiserate with you if you have that problem, but I think just drawing the line and being very upfront with parents and with the student and letting everybody in the school, all of the people responsible for that child's safety, be in on the situation. Good question.
Yeah, really good feedback, Rhonda. Thank you. We're almost at time, but I'm going to squeeze in one final question. And I also reposted the link to our little survey at the end. So if you're able to take that, we would really appreciate it. But our last question is going to be, if it's a new allergic reaction where there was no known allergy in the past, Can you administer Benadryl if there's no physician that writes the orders at the school?
Well, yes, here's the deal. I shouldn't say yes. This one is a big gray area because now you have a student with an issue, but you have no medications prescribed for this student. I'm not sure what the state of stock epinephrine is in Missouri, but if you have stock epinephrine, that does allow you to administer that in the event of an emergency. Back in the day before there was any stock epinephrine, I had a student that was going down with anaphylaxis, and student didn't have a known allergy or anything. And what I ended up doing, and I'm not standing on this and saying this is great national guidance, but I'll just share what I did was I called the principal down real quickly. Luckily he came. And I told him, I said, I'm going to take the epinephrine auto-injector of the nicest mother, and I'm going to use it on this child. But I am doing something outside of my scope of practice, but there will not be an untoward effect. So it won't be medical negligence. Can I do that? And he said, I'll own it with you. And that's what we did. But Angie, I don't know if you want to speak to stock epi or Benadryl or whatever in Missouri.
Well, it will definitely go back to your school policy and procedures of what's allowed. But if they are having difficulty with breathing, swelling of their throat, there's no hesitation. You use the stock epinephrine. Yes.
And almost every school board policy has an order or authorization for school nurses to use epinephrine, to have stock epinephrine.
Well, we love stock epinephrine. We fought hard for it. So, that's, I think, a necessary thing for our students. Saves lives.
All right. So, we've come to a little past 4 o'clock now. So I think anyone who would like to stay on and continue to ask questions, if some of our panelists have a little additional time, just because we've had some good questions come in. But we can also say that kind of wraps the webinar for today. I just want to thank everyone again for joining us. So I'll go ahead and ask the next question that I had. So do you monitor high school allergies as close as you do with the elementary students when it comes to them choosing their meals in the cafeteria?
I'm guessing that's my question. Actually, we do, in the fact that one of the things that we strive for is making our allergy menus personalized to the point that we can, so that students are eating a similar item to the other students. If it's pasta bar, and we can accommodate the student allergy, that student with the allergy that day, with a form or fashion of the pasta bar choice, if that's what they like, then we're going to do that. So we try and make it something so that they don't stand out, so that they aren't, a lot different. And I think by doing that, it opens up more possibilities and more meal choices to the students. And so I think even in our high schools and secondary schools, we have a little bit more compliance and interest in continuing the diet modifications rather than bringing things from home, or at least that's a feedback we've gotten. So we feel like that's really important for our students to, to fit in and feel like they're like all of their friends. So that is one of the things I think that helps that a little bit, to the extent that you can. There's some diets that are so extreme, you do have to go to special foods, but for the most part, we try and modify like items.
Rhonda, we certainly appreciate that as nurses, because we know as they get older, they get embarrassed around their peers. And so they would like to be as much like their peers and have the same choices, because we do still stay very concerned about our middle school and high school students, and build a relationship with them so that they feel comfortable talking to us about it and how we can help them feel comfortable in the cafeteria and comfortable around their friends. We certainly wouldn't ever want them to keep it a secret to the point that their life would be threatened because they were not communicating that with their friends. I had a high school student that had peanut allergies, and we were very well aware of it, and everyone else was. And then in the classroom, they started doing an experiment with almonds, and she started having trouble in the classroom, and she excused herself and come down to the nurse's office to talk to me about it. And I was grateful that we had that relationship, that we could say, okay, we weren't aware that you had a sensitivity to tree nuts, but now we know, and you did the right thing by getting out of the classroom, coming down here, and we'll proceed with those precautions.
One other thing that you might consider, I know we do this, a lot of these allergies, we see these students start in kindergarten and go clear through school with us. So one of the rules that we do have, or the accommodations that we reach out to parents and students and offer, is when they go from one building to another. So if when they go from 5th grade to 6th grade, that's kind of a different building, and it's exciting, but it's scary too. So prior to them transitioning into their new school, we do reach out and ask to set up a diet meeting with each of our students as they go from one level, because the diet choices change from K through 5 to middle school, and then again to high school. So at each of those transitions, we do try and meet with each of our allergy students so that they feel comfortable. They knew who the person is that they need to go to for their new meal accommodation, their meal that they want for that day, and who they communicate with if something changes or they're not going to be there or they want something different. So I think that really helps them feel comfortable, and also helps them to fit in still, but to be willing to continue. And as you said, then that helps us to build that relationship and that rapport with that student even more at each level. So.
We have time
That's
for
great.
one more question. I see a question in the chat.
Do you? Okay, go ahead.
So this one is, what are your thoughts on the risks of warnings contains versus may contain allergens on food ingredient labels?
That is our biggest concern. And, so there are, just as you said, Sally, we can't say that we're a peanut-free environment. We cannot guarantee unequivocally that there couldn't be something, that a student couldn't bring something from outside. And the labels are our biggest concern, because they aren't by law required to disclose if something is made in a peanut or tree nut factory, or if there might be another allergen produced in that same factory. And so we do train our managers when they get a case of new products in, they're supposed to check it, because the allergens do change and they don't have to notify us. So we do routinely check all of our labels to try and keep our students safe. But we also do have a letter that, especially for peanuts and tree nuts, that we do provide to our parents, just alerting them to the fact that we don't knowingly purchase things that contain peanuts or tree nuts, but we can't rule out that sometimes things may not be made in one of those factories. So we do disclose that to them when we start the process. We also do, though, reach out to manufacturers. And for instance, right now, we chose not to put a cookie on the menu for a few weeks, because with the supply chain issues, we couldn't get one that we knew was made in a peanut tree nut-free factory. And that is such a big thing in our district for so many of our students. We chose to not serve one rather than serve something that might be unsafe, because they're used to it being safe. So we're really thoughtful. There's cereals that we just won't, brands of cereal we won't buy, because we just don't have guarantees that those aren't produced in a factory that also has nuts in it. So we do try and take every precaution we can to safeguard our students. So.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. That's a great those are great tips. And I think that is a topic that is very relevant, and especially now. Does anyone else have anything else to add? That was very good.
Well, I just think, this really speaks to, what Rhonda was saying, is just that we have to remember to build bridges with parents of students with allergies. It's easy, sometimes they'll come to us with this outrageous request, and it's like, you kind of want to go, what, are you kidding? But I think always responding with, well, let's talk about that, because what we want is what's best for your child. And really, so many of these parents are spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to keep their child alive. And I think we need to think about that all the time when we interact with them. And I just think that, I kind of, I don't have a child with an allergy. I kind of want to move to Rhonda's district at some point, because I think you've just got such a compassionate approach to food allergy management.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
Right.
Sally.
And I think that was about all the questions that we had too. So, Lisa, does anybody have any closing thoughts or anything?
I don't think so. I do have a slide with all of the places where people can access the recording and things. So I think I'll share my screen, and please, if you have not completed the survey, we would ask that you do that. And I just want to thank you all so much for taking precious time out of your day. I know how busy everyone is and how much you all have to do with everything that's going on, to join the Missouri Healthy Schools for this presentation. And I want to thank Sally for joining us, and all of the panelists, Rhonda and Angie and Barbara. Thank you for your great information. On this screen, you'll see where the recordings are available. And please, if you're on Twitter, think about following Missouri Healthy Schools and at Mo Healthy Kids. And these are our other links.
Yep, and we'll be sending a follow-up email with the survey, as well as the link to the recording and resources that I've compiled here from our chat today, as well as any additional resources that I receive. So. Great. Thank you all so much for coming today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.